So what I'd like to demonstrate here is hi everyone, Neil Malik from Knack Training here, bringing you another everyday office video. I'd like to bring to you a little power tool that I built for myself in Excel. I find that it just works better for me. And it's going to be a macro that creates new tabs. So whenever I build a spreadsheet, I'm trying to build a spreadsheet that's aesthetically pleasing at the same time as being functional. And in addition to that, of course, when I make a new tab, naming it Sheet 1 or Sheet 2 or Sheet 17 is really going to be inadequate for the situation. I want to give that thing a name. So what I decided to do to simplify my life when I'm building these sample spreadsheets is to go to the Developer tab at the top of the screen. And if I don't have the Developer tab, remember that you can go to File, trace down to Options, and on the Options dialog under Customize ribbon, you can hit the checkbox there for Developer. Now, once the Developer tab is open and running, what we're going to do here is not something that can be recorded because I want to create a new sheet. I want to take the grid lines off of that sheet, and then I want a pop-up that asks me what the name of that sheet happens to be. So to do this, I go to my Developer tab, I click on Visual Basic, and I'm going to do this in personal.xlsb. Because this personal macro workbook is where I can come back and reuse this stuff later on down the line. Now, anytime that I make a macro, it's a good idea to create modules into which either one or multiple macros will make sense organizationally. So what I'll do here is I'll right-click on modules, create a new module by going to Insert and choosing Module, and then I'm just going to name this module. So it'll be called Module, and then it will be New Tab Custom. Okay, so this new tab custom right here, as you can see, I've got this empty space to work with. Every macro that I create always starts with the word sub, and then I'll do something like custom new tab, open parentheses, close parentheses. And when I hit enter on my keyboard, Excel goes ahead and adds the end sub option there for me. Now, as I'm making any macro, it's important to always add comments to this. So I'll do a single quote up here at the top, and this will be creating a new worksheet within our current workbook that has no grid lines and requests a custom name. Okay, so how are we going to make this happen? Tab in because indentation is a nice, easy way to see the relationships between the different chunks of code. So if the sub and end sub is the container for some chunk of code, then tabbing in lets you see that that is, in fact, contained within it. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to make two worksheets. We're going to call dim current worksheet as worksheet, and dim new worksheet as worksheet as well. And we'll set the current worksheet as active sheet. and we'll set the current worksheet equal to active sheet. Okay, so the current sheet is the active sheet. And we're going to need to remember this because in a second here, what we're going to do is active workbook dot add. Okay. And we're going to need to remember what the active sheet is because now we can go to Sheets and add a new worksheet. Once we add that worksheet, then that is the new active sheet. So we'll do active sheet dot move in order to active. So we'll do active sheet dot move, and we'll set that to after current worksheet. Now in the active window, we will not display grid lines. There we go. And then we'll want to get a name for this worksheet. So this is important. We need to, whenever we're using some text, for example, we always need to know what text you want, as well as what text is currently there. So we're going to do two strings. So dim worksheet name as a string, and dim new name as a string as well. And a check name as a string as well. So what we're going to do here is we're going to ask you to give us a name, and then we're going to need to make sure to check that against what's already out there. So to do this, what we need to do is pop up a little box and take that in as the WS name. So WS name is equal to we're going to take an input box and just give them a prompt of what name would you like to assign? And then we need to compare this against our check name.
Hey everybody, Neil Malik from Knack Training here. In today's Everyday Office video, I want to show you a very simple little power tool that I built for myself to, just make my job easier. So I am very, very regularly in a situation where, as you can see here, I need to increase the width of these different columns or auto-fit the columns. And it's not that difficult to take your mouse, highlight the columns that you're talking about here, and then double click the border between those. And it's also not that difficult to do a quick Control A on my keyboard to select all, and then a Control space bar to select the entire column, and then use the Alt key, then the H key, then the O key, then the I key to auto fit their height. But it actually kind of is, right? Nobody wants to have to do that many keyboard shortcuts for something that you might have to do very, very regularly. So to make this happen, what I did is I made a simple macro. To do this, go to the Developer tab at the top of your screen. If you don't have the Developer tab at the top of your screen, click on File up here in the top left-hand corner, go down to Options, and then go to the Customize Ribbon option here on the left to check the checkbox to make sure the Developer tab is visible. So the Developer tab is where we go to make our macros. Now here, this is one of those things I really don't feel like would be best suited to be recorded. So I'm going to write this macro by hand. It's very simple. It is exactly one line, but it's actually pretty darn easy to understand. So here we go. We go to the Developer tab and we click on Visual Basic over here on the left so that we can get access to our personal macro workbook. Now, if you notice here, I've already got a module that has this in there, but I'm going to go ahead and make a new one real quickly here. So we need a module to contain macros. You don't have to have only one macro per module. You can have multiple in one module. In fact, let's take a look real quick. So here are my macros, and you can see here that there's two of them in there with a little divider line. But if you were doing something from scratch, you might want a new blank module to work with. So you right-click on Modules here on the left. You go to Insert and insert a new module, and it's currently called Module 1. If you want to, you can rename it. I'm going to go Module Test AutoFit. Yeah, that'll be fine. So Module Test AutoFit, if I double-click on it, it's a new empty sheet of paper. Okay, if you've never made a macro before, first thing you need to know is every macro starts with the word sub and then whatever you want to call this macro. So I would call it something like auto fit columns, something like that. But because this is just a test run, I'm going to probably do AFC, right? Auto fit columns. Okay. Hit enter a few times to give yourself some breathing room here. And because you're not going to have any idea what this was for in a couple of weeks, you're going to want to do the following. Single quote and put in a comment here. So the comment for me will be plain English, just something I'm writing to myself, something like this macro selects the current region the cell is in, then auto fits the columns for that region. Okay,
So that's the basic concept. Now, what line of code is going to let us do this? Tab in. Okay, so based off of the cell that we're in right now, that would be active cell. We need to be able to access the region of cells that the active cell is in. Dot current region. Okay, well that's good, but we specifically need the columns of that region, right? Because the region is a block of cells. It's not the columns that those cells are in. Dot entire column. Okay, and now what we need to do is we need to auto-fit those. Dot auto-fit. There it is. Whatever the active cell is, highlight the entire region that we're in, then highlight the columns for that region so that we can auto-fit the columns. Now, if we wanted to make this totally complicated, we could also do active cell dot current region dot entire row dot autofit. Because, autofit, because of course you can also autofit rows in addition to columns. That's it. Now you have a macro in your personal macro workbook that you can execute that will autofit whatever you happen to be in. So let's see if that works or not. I'll go ahead and close this down. So here I am, and actually let's go ahead and reduce the height of some of these rows. Okay, so there are definitely, you can see over here on the left, a lot of squeezed down rows. You can see up here at the top, you can see that these columns are not wide enough, and I'm simply selected somewhere in there. I go to the macros button up at the top of the screen, and you see here is the AFC macro that's right there. And when I hit run, just like that, everything gets auto-fit for me. Isn't that easy? Now, you could assign this a keyboard shortcut, but you could also put this onto the quick access toolbar as an easy way to make use of it. Let's go ahead and minimize this down. Let's go ahead and squeeze these down so we can see this in action again. Okay, so we have a problem here. And instead of going to macros, clicking on macros and using the AFC macro, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the drop-down menu on the quick access toolbar up here at the top of the screen. I'm going to trace down to more commands because in this left-hand panel right now it says that it's looking at the popular commands, but if I hit the drop-down menu where it says popular commands, I can switch over to macros. And then there is my AFC macro. I can click add here in the middle in order to put it onto the quick access toolbar, but notice these little flowchart icons over here to the left for every single macro. You probably want to fix these. You probably want to make this macro have its own special button icon. So I click modify down here at the bottom, and let's see here. Let's see if we can find a decent one for auto-fitting columns. Personally, I use a keyboard shortcut for this, so that's why I didn't figure this. Yeah, maybe this right here. There we go. And this will be called AutoFit. And hit OK. And hit OK. And so you can see that little grid pattern up there is currently called AutoFit. Now here's why I did it, besides the fact that I can now easily click on this button. If I hit the Alt key on the keyboard, see it's just number 4, that's it. Alt 4, and just like that I have all of my cells in this range AutoFit. Now you can go even one step further than this. Let's go back to the Visual Basic button up in the top left-hand corner, and instead of saying active cell.current region, let's auto-fit literally everything. So we'll call this active sheet dot cells dot entire row dot autofit, and active sheet dot cells dot entire column dot autofit. That's that. So now this will take the entire sheet that we're on, not just the current cells. Let's see this in action. I'm going to autofit these, or excuse me, squeeze these down. I'm going to squeeze these down right here. But I'm also going to come over here All right, so you can see that column K also needs to be autofit. So once again, Alt 4. Okay, so you can see these columns all got autofit perfectly. That's great. But in addition to that, right over here on the right, there's column K, and it's stretched out to accommodate that whole cell.